in the sleepy town of Riverside, Missouri. Back in 1956, a wide, muddy river cut the world in two. On one bank, life was a struggle. On the other, it thrived. Connecting them was a single wooden bridge, old and groaning under the weight of time, a path few dared to cross anymore. Every single morning, rain or shine, Jack Turner made that journey. He was a construction foreman, a widower, raising his daughter on the poorer side of town. Head down, lunchbox swinging in one hand. His heavy work boots would echo a lonely rhythm on the old planks. He never looked back at the home he was leaving, and he never looked forward to the place he was going. The other workers on the rich side would often tease him. "Don't fall in, Turner," they'd shout with a laugh. "That bridge is older than you are." He'd just offer a tight smile. "Still standing, ain't it?" He knew that bridge had history. His own father had helped build it a lifetime ago, back before the war, when the town was still whole, when neighbors were neighbors, no matter which side of the river they lived on. But times, they had a way of changing. The factories on one side closed their doors, casting a long shadow of poverty, while the other side boomed with new money and tall fences. The divide wasn't just in the landscape anymore. It was in their hearts. It got so bad that even the children had a rhyme. "Don't cross the bridge. They don't want us there." The bridge wasn't a connection. It was a border. One dusty afternoon, after a long day at the site, Jack came home to find his 11-year-old daughter, Ellie, sitting by the riverbank. She was completely absorbed, hammering a bent nail into a small, weathered piece of wood. He crouched down beside her, the smell of sawdust still clinging to his clothes. "What are you building there, kid?" he asked gently. Saluk had up her eyes bright with purpose, and held up her creation. "A bridge," she said, her voice filled with a pride that could move mountains. "One that never breaks." Jack let out a soft chuckle. "Well, that's a tall order for a little builder." She just grinned back, a mischievous spark in her eyes. "Then I'll just have to make it taller." Ellie was a special girl, full of a light that seemed to defy the town's gloom. Her mother had passed away a few years back, just like Jack, his wife, and she found her comfort here, by the water. It was the same spot her own father used to fish, before a sudden flood had swept him away, leaving her an orphan in the care of her grandmother. Her little bridges weren't just a game. "They'll help people meet again," she'd explain with a simple, profound certainty. Seeing that fire in her, Jack started bringing home scraps of wood from his job sites, bits of pine, discarded planks, forgotten blocks. Together, they'd sit by the river, building her little modelers. Some floated perfectly. Others bent and buckled. Many sank, right to the muddy bottom. But every failure was met with a peal of Ellie's laughter. "That's okay," she'd say, already reaching for another piece of wood. "We'll just try again tomorrow." That spring, the sky opened up and refused to close. Rain fell with a fury no one in Riverside could remember. For 2 solid days, thunder rattled the windows and the river swelled, churning with mud and debris, creeping higher and higher up its banks. Then, on the 3rd night, a sound tore through the storm, a deep, agonizing groan of tortured wood, followed by a tremendous crack that echoed across the valley. By dawn, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The townspeople emerged from their homes to a devastating sight. The old wooden bridge was gone. Half of it had been ripped from its foundation, swept away by the raging current. Panic quickly set in. The town was completely severed. Supplies couldn't get across. Medicine couldn't be delivered. Families were cut off. People gathered on opposite banks, shouting across the roaring water, their voices lost in the noise, their faces masks of helplessness. Ellie stood silently beside Jack, her small hand clutching his. She watched a piece of the bridge's railing float past like a ghost. She whispered, her voice barely audible. "We can fix it. Right, Dad?" Jack looked at the powerful, unforgiving water, a force of nature that dwarfed any man. "Not fast enough, kid," he said, his heart sinking. But as he looked across the river, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Dozens of people on both banks were gathered, staring, not at the broken bridge, but at each other. For the first time in a long, long time. They were seeing their neighbors again. The very next morning, as the sun tried to break through the clouds, Jack Turner walked down to the ruined crossing. He wasn't carrying a lunchbox. He was carrying his toolbox. He stood on the muddy bank and shouted, his voice rough but clear, "Who's helping?" At first, there was only silence. Then, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. It was Sam, his best friend, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart of gold. He clapped Jack on the shoulder. "Count me in." Soon after, a farmer with weathered hands joined them. Then 2 teenagers who probably should have been in school. By sunset, a small but determined crew was at work sawing, hammering, and shouting plans to a similar group that had started gathering on the other side. Even Mayor Hughes, a proud man from the rich side, came down from his polished office, his fine shoes sinking into the mud. "This is highly irregular. It isn't safe," he barked, more concerned with liability than community. Jack didn't even stop hammering. He just called back over his shoulder, "Neither's doing nothing." "Mayor." Later, as he paused to wipe the sweat and rain from his brow, he saw a small figure struggling toward him, hauling a bucket of nails almost as big as she was. It was Ellie. A real smile, the first in days, spread across Jack's face. "Didn't I tell you to stay home and keep dry?" he asked, feigning sternness. She just beamed, her face smudged with dirt. "You heard me," she said, full of defiance and love. "I told you I'd build a bridge someday." By the 3rd night, the riverbanks were transformed. Torches and lanterns flickered in the darkness, lining both sides of the water like a string of fallen stars. An incredible thing was happening. Families who hadn't spoken in decades were working together, passing lumber from hand to hand across the narrowing gap. The air was filled with the rhythmic symphony of hammers on wood, a sound of creation echoing under the night sky. It wasn't just the sound of a bridge being built. It was the sound of a town healing. Ellie stood near the water's edge, holding up one of her small, perfect toy bridges against the backdrop of the real one taking shape. She whispered to herself, a prayer to the river, almost done. And then, just as the first light of dawn painted the sky, the last plank went in. The new bridge wasn't pretty. It was uneven, rough-hewn, and still smelled strongly of wet pine and hard work. But it was strong, it was terse, and when the townspeople finally began to cross it, something shifted in the air. No one asked who was from which side. They just smiled, nodded, and helped each other over the rough spots. They were just people. Neighbors, together. A year passed. The new bridge stood strong, a testament to what they had accomplished. The town council, led by a humbled Mayor Hughes, officially named it the Turner Bridge. At the dedication ceremony, Jack insisted it should have been called Ellie's Crossing. She was there that day, of course, standing proudly beside him, clutching the very first toy bridge she had ever made. As the crowd applauded, Jack leaned down to his daughter. "You know," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I guess you really did build one that never breaks." Ellie looked up at him, her eyes shining with a wisdom far beyond her years. She smiled. "It's not made of wood, Dad," she said. "It's made of people." And as the view pulls back, we see sunlight glinting on the water children from both sides, laughing and chasing each other across the sturdy planks. And a town that was once divided looking finally like it was whole again. Thanks for watching our story today. If it moved you, please give us a like. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that connects us all. See you next time.